Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is March 29th, 2023, and I wanted to make a video that's a bit more philosophical and talk a bit about the next 100 years of humanity. So hold on to your hats. This one's going to be an interesting one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I haven't made a philosophical video about such a broad ranging topic in quite some time. So let me share my screen. Wow! There we go. So there are, in my view, five areas that will define humanity in the 21st century. So every century's kind of got a shtick. And so when you look at the 19th century, we started having things like the telegraph and the train and electrification. So suddenly we lived in a world where you could move very quickly and you transfer human labor for mechanical labor, and we could communicate with each other long distances without a high degree of latency. In the 20th century, we got the aerospace industry, we got the internet, we got computers. These are the kinds of things that defined humanity. So it's really interesting to ask, in the year 2100, kind of like Conan O'Brien, in the year 2000. So in the year 2100, what is going to be, when we look back at the century from 2000 to 2100, the stuff that really defined us and either made or broke humanity? And I'd argue actually there are five things. So first, I'd say that AI, and that's of no surprise to anybody, is probably the biggest of the lot, because this is the first time we've been able to extend our cognition to the point where we have synthetic cognition at a global scale that's growing and evolving at a very fast pace. In fact, this is so significant that I feel that this is probably going to be the thing that either makes or breaks humanity. So there's no way to beat AI. They won. Congratulations. But then there's more stuff to it. So, two, I think quantum computing. Three, synthetic biology. Four, you have quantum computing, synthetic biology, AI, nanotech. And five, this is the one that US policymakers are having trouble grokking, is blockchain technology. And they're all interconnected to each other. So let's talk about it a little bit. So first off, if you want some reading resources, so these are some books that I'd highly recommend. So you have Quantum Computing for Everyone, that covers your quantum. You have this book from Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, and Henry Kissinger and Daniel, The Age of AI. You have this book from Drexler, which is Radical Abundance, How a Revolution in Nanotechnology Will Change Civilization. Very fascinating book. And co-founded a company, actually, was one of these authors, George Church. He and I founded a company together called Regenesis, How Synthetic Biology Will Reinvent Nature and Ourselves. So these are kind of foundational reading that I'd highly recommend if you want to understand a little bit more about these different topics. But in general, they're all interconnected in that what they do is they extend us or they regulate us. So these are all extension or regulation technologies. So in all these cases, when you look at things like AI, what you're effectively doing is extended cognition. You're creating a second brain that lives outside of your brain that you can interact with. Okay, so Chat GPT is a great example of this. You can ask a question, it replies back to you, and then you gain some sort of knowledge from those interactions or insight. from those interactions. The superpower of this second brain is the second brain has access to the internet, and it's also recursive, meaning it's self-training. So GPT-4 trains GPT-5, and GPT-5 trains GPT-6. And every time it does this, it gets exponential capabilities. And whenever you have an exponential growth technology that can create new knowledge and new insight, whoever has first access to that is going to win. That's the history of humanity. The thing, though, is that that second brain is still constrained to classical computing. So, no matter how brilliant your AI gets or how much exponential knowledge your AI gets, you can't query an AI and say, break Satoshi's keys. What the AI would be able to do is tell you how it would be done in an abstract sense, but it does not have the capacity to do that because the computing model that the AI is constrained by is the classical computing model. So Turing machines, von Neumann architecture, these types of things, very classical model. When you look to quantum computing on the other side, this is a new computing model, and this gives you new capabilities. Okay, and these new capabilities are very significant. So, for example, we wrote a paper with some authors out of Princeton called One Shot Signatures. And basically, what this does is it gives you the ability to sign something only once and then guarantee it can never be signed again. Can't do that in classical computing. Completely new ways to communicate with each other, completely new ways to connect with each other. And you'll notice something that these are interconnected technologies because the minute you have quantum computing, then you have quantum AI. So the AI now has access to that. And then you could query something like break Satoshi's keys. And you wouldn't have to know how to do that. The AI could figure that out because it has access to best available algorithms. It would be able to write the code, program a quantum computer, run the code on the quantum computer, and then give you the output of that. Okay. So these two technologies together have an amplifying effect. And I would argue the AI would be better equipped to use quantum computers than humans are. So as this grows exponentially, this is going to be kind of the new playground for a lot of the extended stuff that it's doing. Interestingly enough, Penrose, who's a very famous physicist, actually believes that the human brain has quantum properties about it. And he actually wrote computing properties. He actually wrote a paper about it. It's a pretty cool paper. It's very complicated. All right. Synthetic biology is where you start using technology to manipulate and change organisms. Okay. So basically, you do things like de extinction. You can do things like add new capabilities. Like, for example, what if you want to regenerate human tissue? Or what if you want to be like a chameleon and have cells that actually can change color? In fact, there was an experiment that was done where they took human tissue and they took cells that were in an octopus and they were able to hybridize those cells together and give the human tissue the ability to look like a chameleon. So it actually could change color. So yeah, because if you see videos on YouTube of like an octopus floating around, octopus can change the color of its skin. So actually, you potentially could add that capability into human tissue. So it's an extension of our capabilities. Now, you'll notice something that each of these things can be used in one direction or the other. You can use it in an extension direction or a regulation direction, meaning that the existence of this capability, you can use synthetic biology to take features away, or you can use it to add new features. Now, what's really cool about this is that we talk a lot about interfaces. And so there's this topic like brain computer interface, or in general, human computer interface. Okay, so this is a specific topic, and that's the the whole field of inquiry. And there's actually a phenomenal center at Carnegie Mellon University that studies human computer interface. And normally, when you think of a human computer interface, you think of things like, a mouse or a keyboard. But what's happening is now we're trying to integrate the computers more deeply, where the computers are actually now in our brains or somehow can understand our brain waves and we can think to text. So there's a very famous company called Synchron, and there's also Neuralink, and these are examples of that. Well, if you have synthetic biology capabilities, you potentially could use biological systems to replicate computing systems. So you can create new interfaces, or you can create different things. Like you can store information in DNA. You could store data inside human cells. You could do all kinds of really cool things in synthetic biology. And that's why I recommend this book from George Church, Regenesis, because he actually goes through a pretty rigorous a set of different things that people could do to kind of change the way that human biology works or any biology works to accommodate things. A very closely related topic is nanotech, and I also say material science. Okay. This is something that the press doesn't talk about as much, but actually I think is just as meaningful. And it has a huge connection to all of these topics. Why? Because what nanotechnology basically allows you to do is change any physical thing into a computer at some point. You can do that. So any surface, so imagine that you're at a restaurant, and at that restaurant you have a table. Okay, so you guys are together. So ordinarily your experience at a restaurant is that you have menus. Well, what if the surface itself is computer, and you sit down and you just put down something like an ID, or you put down a loyalty card or something like that, and then you get a contextual menu right on the table. The entire surface just changes over and becomes kind of like an e-ink display and shows you all the menus and all the interesting things. And if you're a loyal member or like a military member or something, like, you get a completely different experience than if you are everyday person. So everything basically is a computing surface. Well, wait a minute. If you have AI, that means that AI now has a larger universe of things that it can interact with. And if you have synthetic biology combined with nanotechnology, then you can talk about embedding computing capabilities into biological systems and vice versa. So these two together would actually cure cancer, just as an example. Why? Well, because you can know where the cancer is and what's cancer, what's not cancer, and you have machines that are small enough that they can take over the biological processes of humanity and basically use your immune system to attack any cancer. So you get that for free. And that's just a small thing when you start connecting these technologies together. In terms of regulation, you can imagine these nanotechnologies with synthetic biology to actually be used to regulate human behavior or human biological processes like cure epilepsy or if there's undesirable people, these technologies could be used together to regulate them. So for example, with pedophiles, they have things called chemical castration. You could actually use this much more effectively here. So you'll notice something here. This is neither good or bad. It's neutral, and it really depends upon your philosophy, and it really depends upon your viewpoint. Blockchain technology, in my view, belongs in this category because what blockchain technology effectively does is it is the thing that could be used to create the rules in this new world order. How we create rules in a physical sense. is that we write them down on a piece of paper. Those become laws. Okay. And then the laws have social consensus. And then if you violate them, we punish you in some way. Okay. There's some form of punishment. So there's thought goes to paper, paper goes to law, law goes to social consensus. And then you have a punishment mechanism for compliance. Does this work well? No. 1% of the American population's in prison for violation of these laws. We question the validity of the laws and wisdom themselves. The social consensus is milky at times, doesn't work so well. Well, in a digital system, you have this idea of replication of natural law. So, man law, natural law, what the hell does that mean? Natural law, like physics. So, you imagine something like gravity. You discover it and you can react to it, but you can't change it. And whether you know it or not, it's there. Okay. You can't change natural laws. So the laws of physics are immutable. What digital systems allow you to do is take something that you would usually enforce through a social consensus and then treat it as if it's immutable and it cannot be violated. So there really isn't a notion of a lack of compliance, and there really isn't a notion of punishment where and when you can do these types of things. And that's really the superpower of blockchain technology, is that it lives in that space of a synthetic natural law where it can take things that we would like to have, encode them in just the right way, and then suddenly make those things immutable. Well, why is this relevant to the other components? Well, if you have nanotech capabilities and synthetic biology capabilities, what you can do is digitize the physical. So you can put in your biological systems and your physical systems, that table at the restaurant, your car, all kinds of things, basically a computing layer that will act according to these laws and social consensus that we have as if it was the laws of physics. Treat them like gravity and say you cannot violate them. So it's almost like magic. Okay. So if you say, okay, Bob can't go into this area, his body physically will not let him go into that area. So let's say a restraining order or something like that sees the person, can't approach the person. Whoa, there's some free will considerations here. Oh no. You see, this is the point of these emerging capabilities. Then we also ask, where does the thought and the social consensus come from to inspire the laws, the rules that we are governed by? Well, if you have AI growing exponentially, you have basically an AI lawmaker, and it can have cognition at a scale that no human has ever seen before. The AI lawmaker needs technology to enforce the law, and that's effectively what blockchain is doing. So we have the biggest social experiment in the world going on right now. We're going from 20th century capitalism to the ESG movement, the Klaus Schwab special. Okay. And this is not a small deal, guys. Every single industry in the world is getting transformed into this. We're talking about $150 trillion conservative price tag. There is no governance or regulation layer for ESG, which is why a lot of people believe that ESG is actually a one world government. And before you call me a conspiracy theorist, I'm just saying this is what some people believe. And why they believe it is, if you're telling me you're going to regulate all the carbon, you're going to regulate all the supply chains, you're going to regulate all the manufacturing processes, you're going to regulate the hiring practices of companies, you're going to regulate how people interact with each other, you're going to regulate the governance of companies, you have to be sufficiently powerful in the old order, when we talk about the physical sense, this order right here, to punish people for a lack of compliance. Well, the only entity that would be powerful enough to do this on a global scale would be a one world government, which is why under ESG you have things like CBDCs. Okay. So what's really happening there? That says a central bank issues the currency and controls the flow and distribution, and then you combine it to social credit. When you have these things together, what translates to is if you don't do what the ESG order says, your money gets shut off. Just like your Facebook page gets shut off if you don't say the things that Facebook likes. Just that simple. So that is the current trajectory of the 21st century without blockchain technology. It's just that simple. You need a regulation layer, a governance layer, if this is the goal. You have a panopticon where the AI, especially a quantum enabled AI, will have the ability to know if you're in compliance or not. And if you're not in compliance, there needs to be a punishment system, soft or hard, so some form of meta government to basically force you into compliance. So things like shutting off your money or just basically restricting your freedom in society. And we saw how freedom could be so radically restricted so quickly during COVID. So this is where the world is heading. Now, what blockchain technology does is it actually gets rid of that, but it allows you to keep goals, if those are wise or unwise, much the same. Why? Because instead of having human beings decide, you have protocols decide. So no one is in charge. China is not in control. The United States is not in control, but it can act as a regulating layer. And it's a regulating layer with teeth because these capabilities, these other four, extend blockchain technology into the physical world. They digitize the physical. They basically give you the ability to operate and act on and change a physical system into natural law and basically compel people accordingly. Now, if the protocols are fairly designed, then you get things like equality by design. You get things like guarantees of rights. Okay. So, for example, if you have a privacy right or these types of things, you can actually guarantee those rights because the protocols can enforce that and they can't be influenced by a government, a corporation, or a particular agency. So, this really is the conflict of our time because the problem is that capitalism is going to give us these four things and we have no say in that. Capitalism is developing AI because it who first person to get it becomes the world's richest person and most powerful person. Capitalism developing quantum computing because it solves very hard problems, and the first people to solve those very hard problems again make windfall money. Synthetic biology, this is transcendent of capitalism. Synthetic biology at its most extreme, especially when paired with nanotechnology, actually gives you immortality, which is the single biggest driving force in human cognition. In fact, there's the denial of death from Ernest Becker makes a phenomenal case about this. Okay, this is why you build the pyramids. This is why you create religions. This is why you do all these crazy things because you don't want to die. Well, synthetic biology actually can make us live forever. or damn near close to it, especially when paired with nanotech, because nanotech can clean things up and kill the cancers. Okay, so these four things are happening. We can't stop them. There's too many people. There's too much stuff going on. The problem is that they don't have a regulating layer, and ESG is a subset of these four horsemen of the 21st century. And people are very concerned that they need a regulating layer. So what's happening is that there is this meta government being constructed basically in secret, now actually much more public, to act as a regulating layer for these types of things. And you see it with the movement towards CBDCs and social credit. You see it with all these transnational agreements that are being signed. You see it with unification of languages. You see it with the efficiency of a one world response to things like COVID, where most people kind of got along with these lockdowns and other things. It's happening. It's not an optional thing. And what concerns me is that I don't elect these people. I have no say in their value set. Uh, the people that are building these things have not really talked too much about equality outside of using it as a weapon to make people hate each other. And there's no preservation of rights. And when people who are designing these things that say China is the model of governance for the world and we should look up and admire it, scares the hell out of me because they seem to be more than comfortable with gulags. So I know these four things are coming and I need a regulating layer for it. So this is one of the reasons why I'm in the blockchain industry. There are a few, but this is probably the primary reason that when I thought about life and I read these types of books that covered these topics, I thought a lot about the consequences of these four horsemen, these four technologies, and if combined together, they're emergent properties of how they're going to radically and fundamentally change the human species. And the problem is, without a proper regulating layer, we have two options. You either create a one world government to control them, and it's very limiting. And generally speaking, humans, when they do that, looks like a pyramid. And a very small group of people at the top live like gods and kings. And the difference between the kings and gods of old is that these ones at the top are immortal and super smart. You can't get rid of them. And the people at the bottom basically are slaves to this society. And the difference between old and new is that your thoughts are now known by the system and regulated accordingly. Congratulations. I don't want to live in that world. I don't think anybody wants to live in that world. Protocols, on the other hand, is a horizontal system. Everybody's equal. It's one big circle. Okay. So it doesn't matter where you live on the circle, you have the same rights and the same access to the system. And then basically you have protocols with AI regulating that system. You know where people stand on this by what they say. So you have the Sam Altmans of the world and OpenAI, they live here. They basically say that only a small group of philosopher kings should have access to this technology, and they're going to decide what you get. Okay, so maybe you can use it to generate pictures of cats, but you're not going to be able to use it for your business unless they tell you specifically. When people live here, what they do is they have things like open source. Okay, they have transparent governance. Okay, they want to share knowledge. They give everybody equal access. They care about the developing world. There's a lot of characteristics here that exist. That doesn't mean we don't care about the environment. That doesn't mean we don't care about sustainable business practices. Doesn't mean that we don't care about proper governance. In fact, I'd argue that this side cares about these things far, far, far more than the people who claim to care about it on the other side of the argument. People here think they're just smarter than everybody else. Everybody here is cattle. And because they're the philosopher kings, they're going to tell you what to do. And they're going to use these four horsemen, these four capabilities to basically dominate and control the human race at a scale we've never seen. Point of blockchain technology is to liberate us. Now, it's an obvious thing. It's a resilient, decentralized system that gives you control of your money. It gives you control of your identity. It gives you control of your data. It gives you control of your voice. So for voting, it gives you control of your privacy. Okay. Shouldn't that be just awesome? Shouldn't everybody want that? But then you see on Twitter, you see on media, you see floating around all these people basically saying there's no use case. What they're really saying is we don't value our sovereignty, the self sovereign part of that. We don't value our control over these things. We're totally fine with living in a system where these people at the top basically run everything. And they'll just decide what I'm allowed to own. They're going to decide who I am as a person. They're going to decide how to share that with other people, what level of voice I have, and ultimately my human rights. Okay, my freedom of association, commerce, and expression. The ACE thing. They get total dominion and control over that. What a blockchain does is it says no one has control over that. We are going to make natural law into digital systems human rights. So, in essence, this is the terminus of the Enlightenment. It's basically where all these thinkers in the 17th and 18th century were headed towards some sort of engine that would define immutable characteristics of humanity and encode them in a way that religions, governments, and individuals could not violate. And doing this in the right way with the right protocols and AI behind it basically guarantees that we live in a fair world and a transparent world, in a world where the human condition improves. I don't see a way out of this. I don't think any reasonable person does. And if you actually read these books, you'll start seeing the pieces connect together. These people don't hang out with each other and know each other. Okay. They may have met each other at parties, like I suspect Church has probably met Schmidt. Kissinger's met everybody. But the thing is that when you read these things, you start realizing that there's an inevitability behind them. And when you really follow what these give us, it will be so transformative that the world will look in 2100 nothing like what it looked like in 2000. It will be inconceivable. And the problem is that these things have the power to impact your free will. They can control you at levels that humanity has never seen before and violate you at levels that humanity's never seen before. Even in the most pervasive Stasi, KGB-esque environments in the Soviet Union, they couldn't truly know your thoughts. You could be pretty good at hiding them. But when we look at technologies like this, they can, whoever they is. Even in the most aggressive dictatorship of the 20th century, the most ruthless leaders, the Stalins, they couldn't force you to do something. They could just punish you if you don't, like gulag you, kill you, and so forth. Well, with technologies like this, it's kind of like The Last of Us with the cordyceps taking over your mind. They can. Okay. People are going to argue we should. Bob the pedophile, we should have something in his brain that prevents him from going to schools and hanging out, in parks and these types of things. You're going to see that argument when these technologies exist. Not today, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's going to happen. Okay. And they're going to say, we're here to protect, very paternalistic, you. We're here to save you. How quickly did we go from 2 weeks to slow the spread to papers, please? The world changes rapidly when people want it to. And we can smell and see the CBDCs and the social credit coming. We can smell and see everything being environmental. Now you have environmental justice. Notice everything is justice now. It used to be just social justice. Now you have climate justice, environmental justice, these types of things. Oh boy, ESG is happening 100 miles an hour. Every country in the world is in some way cannibalizing the capitalism of the 20th century in here, and not because they're all super evil. There's certainly some people who are. It's because the world's running out of resources and things are getting harder and harder to do. You see? And then and they view this as a liability and they say we need to protect you, we need to save you, we need to save the world. So that's where we're going, and that's why I'm in blockchain, and that's why this is not about tokens. They're an essential component of adoption and the governance and transparency of these systems, the operation. But the value of them in terms of USD, what the fuck does that matter? Do you want to be a billionaire in a world like this? Look at the story of Jack Ma. Boy, how powerful it was. I think at his all-time high, it was worth $40 billion. Now he's taking a break in Thailand, learning Taoist poetry, trying not to get shot in the back of the head because he pissed off the people at the top. So don't think at all that this is about money, and have some collective thought about the future of humanity. Whether we live in the pyramid or the circle is completely up to you and what you consent to. If blockchain technology is subjugated and controlled and dominated and shut down and these industries are taken over, by default, the regulating layer will be this. And the watchdog will be an entity that's smarter than every one of us combined, never sleeps, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and can read your thoughts. How about that for the new KGB? If we have this right here, there will be constraints, and the enlightenment will be reflected in those constraints, and everybody will have equal access. The people born in the developing world will have the same capabilities as people in the developed world, but proper governance that you have a say in. You have a share of knowledge. Everybody gets transparency, and all the systems are open. So as new innovations come, we add them to the circle, and everybody gets them, as opposed to innovations following this model where it's just at the top. And they decide who gets access to the secret knowledge. They decide who gets access to everything. See? So I wanted to make this video. It's very philosophical. I'd encourage you to read those 4 books and really think about this entire setup in the back of your mind and see where it goes and follow the threads and see how those threads are moving very quickly. Every billionaire, including myself, investing very much into immortality. Got Hoskinson Health and Wellness. Because you know what? That's human nature. Okay. Sam Altman, OpenAI, just put $180 million into his own immortality company. Jeff Bezos has done it. Bill Gates has done it. Everybody's in that game. Elon Musk is throwing a bunch of money at this. There's so much money going into synthetic biology. Nanotechnology, every military in the world, every government in the world, every manufacturer in the world is dumping massive quantities of money into this, and they're getting real good real quickly. We will have working quantum computers doing novel, interesting things within this decade, and within the 2-3 decades doing a lot more things. AI, you guys have all seen it with GPT and the exponential growth of those types of systems. Now everybody believes within 5 to 10 years, this is going to be the most transformative thing. So we see these things happening. And the blockchain industry is getting to a point where it's developing global scale technologies through things like recursive snarks and improvements to the consensus algorithms and just an all-you-can-eat buffet of technology. So these capabilities, if left to grow freely, will be able to be a regulating layer for these capabilities and create a world where we are what we wanted to be during the Enlightenment, where our rights are protected and we live good lives, and each and every person is equal to each other. We don't invest in this. The default situation is here, and we get this. That's what we get. And there's the media to convince you that they're here to protect you and save you and take care of you from cradle to grave. Never mind how many people have to die along the way or what rights have to be violated along the way. This is the fight of our time and our generation. And you have to decide, are you a circle person or a pyramid person? And which side you're on, the totality of humanity will decide that balance. And you know what? That will be the dominant governance system for the foreseeable future, potentially thousands of years. The Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years. Think about that. So, just something to think about. Pretty heady video, pretty philosophical video for today, but something that has weighed heavily on me at least, and something I think about every single day. From our part, we've already made our decision. We're Circle people, and we're reflecting that by the fact that the technology we work on at IO is open source. The papers are open, patent royalty free. We invest very heavily across the spectrum from research centers at Stanford and CMU to places Edinburgh. And Cardano is a reflection of those principles. When you see things like SIP 1694, it's the first foray into a completely decentralized governance system, which is a model for organizational design. Is it perfect? No, but it's a minimum viable concept that's recursive. So if it's built right, the prior will improve the next. That's why AI is so powerful, because the prior improves the next step, and their innovation steps are very rapid. They have very rapid feedback loops. So I can see a path within 5 to 10 years that you can run a nation state on technology like Cardano. I can see that happening. I can see a path where Cardano could be used to run a national identity system with principles, or a payment system with principles, or a CBDC with principles that protects you. I can see that path. And if left undisturbed, there's enough resources alone in the Cardano ecosystem to actually facilitate and grow that. It's inevitable. We have the decentralized brain. We have the community. We're growing at a rapid rate. We'll wake up in 5 or 10 years and there'll be tens of millions of people. And those people will be engaged and enabled and have a treasury necessary to be able to carry that out and find those use cases and wire that in. What's happening is there is a movement right now, Choke Point 2.0, the globalist movement, the ESG movement, that recognizes that this model is the only thing that stands in the way of the pyramid, because nobody's going to embrace the pyramid if there's another option that's better. If somebody comes to you and says, I have a treatment for your cancer, you have two options. I can either cut off your arms and legs, or I can give you this pill that has very limited side effects and cures it. Which one are you going to pick? You'd be like, give me the pill. You can't have the existence of the pill if your goal is to cut off the arms and legs. So that's why people are attacking crypto so much these days. That's why you see government reports coming saying there's no use cases. I'd like to believe being in control of my money, my identity, my data, my economic agency, my ability to participate in the world, my ability to restrain the power of government over my life is pretty useful. And I'd like to believe the new business models that come that enforce dignity and transparency and non-sociopathic behavior on corporations is a pretty useful social aspect. I'd like to believe that. But if you come from a position where you think that you're going to be high on the pyramid and you want that world to exist, then of course you'd say there's no use case for these types of things. It's a philosophical disagreement about values at the end of the rainbow. The facts are the same. The ESG movement is here. The whole world is rebuilding itself. There is a desire for a one world meta government. It's blatantly clear when you read Klaus Schwab's Fourth Industrial Revolution and you see everything that's being said at Davos. You see what's being said by the world leaders. It's just a question who gets to sit at the top of the pyramid and how they're going to sort that out. That's the default thing. And the four horsemen are there: nanotechnology, synthetic biology, AI, and quantum computing. They're not going anywhere. We all have an incentive as a species to pursue these things for our self-interest. Nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to maximize their personal utility, and people want to help each other. And these technologies can be used for profound good. You can bring back the dead, or at least simulacra of them that are close enough that they're convincing. You can learn anything. You can discover the secrets of the universe. All these things are at our fingertips. This is fire from the gods. Why wouldn't we pursue them? It's not a debate of whether we're going to do it or not. It's just a question of when and how, and the velocity of these things. And certain things could occur to slow things down. Certain things could occur to speed things up. But over the arc of a century, it's inevitable. And with the advancement of medicine, a lot of us may be around listening to this today who in the year 2100 will be a lot older, but we might actually look better depending upon the velocity of this technology. So this is not an abstract hypothetical future. This is a reality. The problem is those four horsemen have no governance layer, and the default is not the one we want. So that's why I'm here. I'm a circle person. You got to decide, are you a circle or a pyramid person? Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This was a long one. Talk to you soon.